Shmuel, oh, he logged out. I wanted him not to mute it because I want to hear what people are saying in the room. Okay, so I'll just start with reviewing what we did yesterday. We were focusing on machlokes between Rabbanan and Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer said that if you make a weird tanai, such as Ella Miploni, you should be Megreshes Mikol Adam. Ella, you're excluding Ploni, you're excluding Ruvain, for instance, from the heter of the get. Rabbi Eliezer holds that works. A very weird get, very weird tanai, but it works. We actually had a suffix. One, under what circumstances did Rabbi Eliezer say it works? Did he even say it works if you said works and L means works, which means you're literally limiting the scope of a get. You're actually creating a deficient get. Nevertheless, Rabbi Eliezer held that it works. And the Gemara ponders, why does it work? But the Gemara brings two possible psukim. And we're going to see there makes a big difference which pasuk you're looking at. There's one pasuk that says, when a woman gets a get, the halcha, the haisa, the ish acher, and he darshan, even if the get could only be matter her, the ish acher, to one other person, that's enough to validate a get. The kol shekain, if the get is good for everybody, it's just not good for only one person. That was one pasuk that the Gemara brought as a support for Rabbi Eliezer, and I believe that was Rabbi Yochanan. Yochanan said, we learn it from Kahuna. By Kahuna, it says, Isha Gerusha me Isha Loika. Who is a Gerusha that's prohibited for a kohen to marry? A woman who's even merely Gerusha me Isha from her husband. So even if she's not mortal to anybody, she's Gerusha me Isha, that's enough of a get to make her possible to a kohen. So Taisus explains it must be that if the get can at least prohibit one person, it must be a legitimately good get. And only then would it be logical to state that even if the get cannot be matched for anybody, still a get to answer her to a kohen. So those were the two psukim that we could learn this chiddush of Rabbi Eliezer that a deficient get will be a good get. That was one pshat in Rabbi Eliezer. The other pshat in Rabbi Eliezer is, of course, a deficient get wouldn't work. It's not a real get. It's not a full get. All Rabbi Eliezer meant was if you make a tanai, almanach, that you will not marry Pliny, that will be a good get. Because there, technically, the get is a full get. You're just putting an external tanai upon her. So those were the two different introduced Ortons who asked very vocally a kasha on Rav Eliezer. And the Gemara started to drill down deep and to understand very in detail what each kasha was. And the Gemara tells us that it's going to slug up 3 out of the 4 kashas, and the only kasha that's going to remain is the kasha of Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah, who said that it simply doesn't make sense to say that you can have a get that doesn't create a complete brisas. Oh, good morning, Shmuel. Please do not mute it. Yeah, leave the sound on. Thank you. So that was the introduction to the Gemara. So we're about to start the deep dive to analyze each of the kashas that were asked upon Rav Eliezer. So the first kasha that we analyzed was that of Rav Tarfon. And in the process of going through all of these kashas, the Gemara is also going to make a determination. How did this person, out of these 4 titans who asked the kasha on Rabbi Eliezer, how did they understand Rabbi Eliezer? Did they understand Rabbi Eliezer was saying, even by chutz, it's a good get? Or did they understand Rabbi Eliezer as meaning only by almanas that it's a good get? So let's start with Rav Tarfon. Tarfon's kasha was, how is it possible that through your Tanai of excluding one person from being Migureshes, how is it possible that that could be a good get? You're going to cause, inadvertently, although, you're going to cause that Yibum won't be able to be done. Yibum will not be able to be done because what if she ends up marrying the brother of the person who was excluded from the get? And then her husband dies. So she'll fall to Yibum, to the person who was excluded from the get. And are you saying, Rabbi Eliezer, that through his Tanai he can eliminate the mitzvah of Yibum? That's impossible. For that, the Gemara responded, that's not kasher at all, because we find a precedent. You find other places where you are allowed to do something that can inadvertently be mevatel yibum. And what is that? One is allowed to marry his niece, specifically the daughter of his son. If one marries the daughter of his son, that's also going to be goyim to a prevention of yibum. Because if he dies with one son without children, his brother will not be able to do yibum. So you see that although Rav Tarfon was so alarmed by this creation of Rav Eliezer that you could be goyim for yibum not to happen, we have a precedent to that. It's nothing to get alarmed about. So that was the first component of the analysis, that we're not so bothered with the kasha of Rav Tarfon. Now the second part of the analysis is, how did Rav Tarfon understand Rav Eliezer's halacha? Dr. Gemara, it must be that Rav Tarfon never understood Rabbi Eliezer's halacha as being a case of chut. And that is because we have a brayta that says, if someone makes a get and says chut, and then the woman remarries some other fellow who she's allowed to marry, once she marries that other fellow, it's totally wiped out any connection that her first husband has at all, including that carve out of chut. So if that's the case, if that's what the halacha but chutz is, then Rav Tarfon's kasha would never have made sense to begin with, because as soon as she married Reuven's brother, the chutz was eliminated, and in fact she would have been able to do yibum with Reuven after that point. So it must be that the way Rav Tarfon understood Rabbi Eliezer's halacha is that even if he said almanach, it worked. Almanach is not a shear in the get; it's a fulsome get. It's just an external t'nai. An external t'nai, for sure, will survive even a second husband. The second husband's marriage can totally sever it from the first husband, but it can't eliminate a t'nai, which is a third party item. And therefore, Rav Tarfon, the fact that he asked his kasha, must have understood Rabbi Eliezer's halacha as having been, if one says almanach, that you should not marry Pliny, Rabbi Eliezer holds that is a good get. And that is exactly where we're up to, which is Nene Rabbi Yosy Aglili Omar. That's where we're up to. Nene Rabbi Yosy Aglili Omar, which is towards the bottom of the daf. If I had to say, it would probably be about 20 lines from the bottom, and it's smack in the middle of a line. Nene Rabbi Yosy Aglili Omar. So now we're going to deep dive into the kasha that Rabbi Yosy Aglili had. Nene Rabbi Yosy Aglili Omar. Heicham Natzinu. You know what I find strange about Eliezer's halacha is, according to Eliezer, you could have a woman who's usher to one person and mutter to another. She's divorced, she's usher to Reuben, yet she's mutter to everyone else. That's an unreasonable scenario that I can't accept is possible. Either usher l'koil or ha'usher is usher l'koil, the mutter will be mutter l'koil. Practically more of a law. Do you really find that so strange? I'm going to give you a list of precedents of things that are mutter to some and mutter to others. Even by the precedent, even by a president, treason and cheating and bribes and calling the election fake is mutter for Biden, but it's usher for Trump. But that the Gemara didn't give that example. The Harei Truma, the Kachin, Truma and Kachin, Shasurim Lazeh, they're usher to a Yisrael, Umuteres Lazeh, yet they're mutter to a Kohen. That's not what our concern is. That's not Rabbi Yosy Aglili's concern. His concern is specifically when it comes to an Isra Isha. Sure, in other things you might find that. Isra Isha Karmina. In fact, tomorrow that doesn't help. I'll show you many cases by an Isra Isha where things are usher to some but not the others. Harayas, my sister, she's usher to me, but she's mutter to everyone else. Zakta Gemara, the Ishut Karmina. I'm talking about due to the fact that she's a married woman. In fact, tomorrow it's the same thing. Ish. Every Ish is mutter to her husband, yet she's usher to everybody else. So it's not unusual what Rabbi Yossi clearly is raising, but that will occur through this unusual get of Rabbi Eliezer. That's in fact why we have a good kasha on the kasha of Rabbi Yossi clearly, which neutralizes his kasha. Ubama. Now we're going to do the second component of our analysis. How did Rabbi Yossi clearly understand Rabbi Eliezer? Was it in the case of Chut, where Rabbi Eliezer took the good get, or was it in the case of Tinamai? So Dr. Gemara, if you're going to tell me that Rabbi Yossi Glili understood Rabbi Eliezer's halacha by almanas like we just determined Rav Tarfon did, that's impossible. Because Hare Hutra Esloi Biznut. Guess what? This woman is not Oshlazah or Mutalazah. She's mutter even to Reuben. Because what was the T'nai that he made in Rabbi Eliezer's case? Shaloi Tinafi, Latloini. You're not allowed to have Nisuin, but Znut would be mutter. So in fact, this woman is mutter to everybody. So how could Rabbi Yossi have even posed such a question that this woman is mutter lazeh, you're also lazeh? She's mutter for everybody because of this. Ella bichut. It must be that the way Rabbi Yossi really understood Rabbi Eliezer is not like Rabbi Tarfon did. Rather, he understood Rabbi Eliezer was saying, even in a case of chutz. In the case of chutz, surely she's an Eis Hashish, Lagaba Ruben, which means even to Znus, it would be an Isra Misa. So now let's get to Rabbi Akiva. If you notice, there's a glaring omission in that the Gemara is tackling the comments of Rabbi Akiva and passing by the comments of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And that's for the obvious reason. It's Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, we said, does not have pircha. And now we're discussing the pircha. Then the Rabbi Akiva of Amar. Rabbi Akiva got to bat, and he asked the following question: what if this woman complies with the restrictions for the get and marries Moshe Pipik? And she built literally a bayis neman v'Yisrael. She had children, and Rachman her second husband now died in this armala, or her second husband divorced her. And then the Amda Benisas possession Netralo. And now she goes back to marry the Ruvain that was originally offered to her from her first get. To get bottle that bayis neman the Yisrael that she thought she made, she built a bayis mamzerim the Yisrael. How could such a horrible thing occur? How could you place a woman into such peril where it will be possible that her beautiful dream life will retroactively become a disaster? Correct the Gemara. Why is Rabbi Akiva concerned with that? That's a very common thing. It has nothing to do with Rabbi Eliezer. Because all Rabbi Eliezer said was, a Tanai can undo a get. Well, what about a Tanai of, I won't drink coffee? That can also undo it. If she drinks coffee after her second marriage, it'll also eliminate the get from my prayer and make the children mamzerim. So, if that's the case, a woman should never be able to remarry with a get if there was any Tanai on it at all. Dilma, loy mekayim, let it know. Maybe she will not be mekayim the Tanai, and then for him to get bottled when they're mamzerim. That's precisely why we're not bothered by Rabbi Akiva's kasha, because Rabbi Eliezer is just making a new Tanai that will work. But every Tanai would have the same concern. And you see, we don't have a concern. We do allow a woman to get married, even though there's a Tanai on her get. So therefore, we will ignore the kasha of Rabbi Akiva. Now let's understand how Rabbi Akiva understood the halacha of Rabbi Eliezer. And that's very obvious at this point. If it's a case of chut, we know once she remarries, the someone who she's mutter to remarry, it completely obliterates any control or connection that the first husband has. And in fact, she can now marry anybody she wants. The Tanya Moida Hoyer Rebbe Eliezer, the Megarish Vishishtoi, the Omar Lo Haret Materis L'Chaladim, puts me plenty, the whole Chav, and this is Liachid Minachshuk, in this Armelog and Skarsha, Shemu Teres L'Zeshanetrolo, because it obliterates the Chut. Ella, it must be Ba'almanas. It must be Rebbe Kiva understood Rebbe Eliezer's words, just like Tarfin above did, because of this very same raya, this exact same raya. It must be that Rebbe Kiva understood Rebbe Eliezer saying Almanas, and therefore that condition will even survive a second marriage. Dover Acher, if you remember, Rebbe Kiva had another kasha that he presented on Rebbe Eliezer, and this is it. Haresha Hoya, Zeshenefra Allah, Koyin. What if the person was a Koyin? The Chutz Merubin was Reuben Cohen, or Reuben Cat. Umeis Hamagarish, and then the Megarish died. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen is this woman is considered a grusha to everybody else, but she's not considered a grusha like Abba the Kohen, because he said chutz mikohen. But he's considered an almana in respect to the Kohen. So the nimtzes almana etzloi grusha etzakoladam. This Kohen is only an almana. To the whole world, she's a grusha. Yet, with no doubt, this Kohen may surely not marry her because of the fact she's a Gerusha to Kolodom. The fact that she's a Gerusha in respect to the rest of the world is enough to say that she's not allowed to marry a Kohen. So let's think about that for a minute. The Isra Gerusha is not a severe Isra to Isra law. The Isra Ish is a very severe law because it comes with a Chiyah Misa. So if this subtle Gerusha in her that's related only to other men, not to the Kohen, will prohibit the Kohen from marrying her, when it's only a question of Grusha Kohen, which is a shvacha lav of an Isra Malchus. The Isra of Misa, where even though she is Megureshet to Kolodom, but Lagabi one person, she's not Megureshet. So that Ashish Ish component in her should also for sure prohibit her from marrying anybody else. And that was Rabbi Kiva's kasha. The Kal V'chomer, U'magrusha Shehikala, it's only an Israel, Asura Mishum Tad Gerishin Shava, even though Lagabi the Kohen, she's not a Grusha, but there is some Tad Gerishin Shava, so even for a Shvak Alav, the Tad Gerishin will impact everybody. Eshes Ish Chamura, when you're dealing with a severe Isser, like Kol Shekain, that the Tad Eshes Ish Shava, that's relevant to the Kohen, should prohibit her from marrying anybody else. That was his kasha. Uvamai. Now before we neutralize this kasha, which we've done in the previous cases, the Gemara is first going to do the deep dive. He understand, based on this kasha, what was Pshat in Rebbe Eliezer. Uvamai. Ilemu v'almanas. If in this understanding, Rabbi Kiva understood that the reason for Rebbe Eliezer's halacha is because it works with almanas, let's turn over on the Amud Beis. Hare Grusha etloi biznut. So what does Rashi say? Hare lo otzer alav elo lina say. Once again, if it's a case of almanah, it's almanah shelo tinofe leReuven Kohen, almanah shelo tinofe to Reuven cat. It's not. She would be considered Megaresh. So therefore, even Lagabi the Kohen himself, she's a shtickle grusha. That's why it's prohibited for her to marry a Kohen. Masha Enkein, the Tzad Ishaboy doesn't apply at all to everybody else. And that's why it will be muktzah. So therefore, it must be a case of chutz. It must be that Rabbi Kiva in this kasha, in the Dover Acher, understood that Rabbi Eliezer was bechutz, which is not going to pose a problem because it's the same Rabbi Kiva. In this first kasha, he understood that Rabbi Eliezer was talking about a case of almanas. In this kasha, it's clear that Rabbi Kiva understood that Rabbi Eliezer was speaking about chutz. What is it? The Gemara is going to get to that. The Gemara, Rabbi Kiva, chutz virulei. Lois of chutz, the almanas virulei, lois of almanas. How could he go in both directions? The Gemara, Kiva shmielei, the ikadamar chutz, the ikadamar almanas. Rabbi Akiva heard different version of Rabbi Eliezer. So he wanted to ask a kasha that would apply equally to both versions. Whichever whichever understanding you have of Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Akiva had a kasha for you. Umay pircha. So Lamaisa, how are we going to neutralize and diffuse this last kasha of Rabbi Akiva? Dr. Gemara, Inema Isser Kahuna Shiny. If you're going to say that Isser Kahuna is different, because the reason why it's usher to a kohen, Isha Grushama, Ishala Ikahu, is because of the special Homer and Kahuna. If that's the reason why, if that's how we will diffuse Rabbi Eliezer's raya, like those we learned that. How do you understand Rabbi Eliezer? It's because it says Isha Grushama, Ishala Ikahu. The Rabban said you can't bring a raya from that pasuk because it's Kahanim. So if you hold that Isser Kahuna shiny, then you could say, Rabbi Eliezer Kahuna Pamaitele. Rabbi Eliezer Gupa is bringing a raya. Rabbi Eliezer Gupa is bringing a raya from Isser Kahuna. Rava Rabbi Yanai, which is Zakanechat Kamash. So Rava will have to learn like Rabbi Yanai, who says Mishum Zakanechat. So let's see Rashi inside. Let's see Rashi. Umay Pircha. So let's see Rashi Umay Pircha, which is where we're slugging up the kasha of Rabbi Yehuda. Umay Pircha Ikol Mifach Apirchei de Rabbi Akiva. What kasha are we going to add to diffuse Rabbi Akiva's kasha? It's second kasha, Basraita. The Klam Rabbi Le'il L'Chulu Islu Pircha. Right? Rabbi says that we have a way to diffuse each one of these kashas. How are we going to diffuse this kasha of Rabbi Akiva? Dr. Gemara. If you want to say that Isser Kahuna is different, and therefore, if Isser Kahuna is different, you can't ask me a kasha that just because a kohen would be offered to marry Quasi Grusha, Huadin, it should be a raya that everybody else should be usher to marry her al Shish, because Isser Kahuna is calmer. So you can't bring me a raya from Kahuna to other places. So Dr. Gemara, is Mr. Kuni. You can't make that distinction. If the place where Rabbi Eliezer learns that even a get with exclusion is a good get, if you learn it from Kahuna, you can't ask a kasha on Rabbi Eliezer. You can't answer Rabbi Akiva's kasha on Rabbi Eliezer by saying Rabbi Eliezer holds Kahuna is more chomer, because that's exactly where Rabbi Eliezer brings his raya from to his whole shita. He brings a raya from Kahuna that you can have a deficient get. So you can't answer a kasha on Rabbi Eliezer by saying it's a Kahuna shiny. It's Dr. Gemara, Rabbi Yana Mishum Zekanach Kamas. Rabbi is going to have to hold that the Makor of Rabbi Eliezer has nothing to do with Kahuna, because we say Isha Kahuna shiny. The Makor of Rabbi Eliezer is the other pasuk that Rabbi Yana brought, which was even if she's only mutter to one other person, it will be a valid get. So that's the independent raya that a deficient get will be a good get, and therefore you cannot ask a kasha why this woman will be usher to a kohen, even though she's not a neshishis for everybody else. And the reason for that is it's a kahuna shine. Beautiful. So after everybody came to attack Rabbi Akiva ever so vociferously, Rabbi Yeshua came to his defense. Amar lahen Rabbi Yeshua, I'm sorry, guys. Ein mashivin es ha'ari la'achamisa. You had all these kashas. You can come and scream with kindness when he's alive. Now that he's no longer here, I'm not thinking the past like him, but you definitely are allowed to come and attack the Bush. The Gemara, remember Rabbi Yeshua can say severely from the fact that Rabbi Yeshua comes to Rabbi Eliezer's defense. It smacks a little bit that maybe Rabbi Yeshua supports the shita of Rabbi Eliezer. Frankly, more, but we know he does not, because Va'inami Mifrach Kaparach. We're shortly going to quote that Rabbi Yeshua also had a kasha on Rabbi Eliezer's shita. This is what he was telling them. I also have a problem with Rabbi Eliezer. However, miu bein lididi, bein liditbu, in meshib nisari lachamisa. Yes, I have a kasha, but it doesn't mean you come screaming to Bismillah against it. After a misa, you're not asking such a kasha. It doesn't mean you have to pass them like it, but you can't go attack them with the mishmash. Back to my Pirchad Rabbi Shua, what in fact was the kasha that Rabbi Shua had. The Tanya we learned. Rabbi Shua, makish koid me havai shnia, the koid me havai rishon. What does it say in the prophet that discusses gershon? It says that a person who marries a woman, havai rishon, and he doesn't like her, the prophet will get Christus. So in a series of two psukim back to back, it talks about a first marriage and it talks about a second marriage. To teach us that the condition that she's in before her first marriage has to be mirrored to the condition that she's in before her second marriage. Before she was ever married, she had no connection to anybody. She was not prohibited from marrying anybody in the whole world. So too, in order for her to be able to remarry after a get, she cannot be connected at all in any which way to any other person. And therefore, a get, such as the get that Eliezer suggesting, which doesn't free her from everybody, that is not a valid. So we have a whole series of kachas on Rabbi Eliezer. We might be talking like Rabbi Eliezer, but we definitely can't attack somebody after Misa. And we have varying opinions as to did Rabbi Eliezer say it's halacha by chutz, or did Rabbi Eliezer say it's halacha by almanos. Gufa, Moedi Rabbi Eliezer, the Megarish Ishtay. This is a brisa that we brought twice to prove that if someone says chutz and then she remarries somebody else, it completely severs any connection to the first husband and any restriction that was in the first get. And what was the case? Moed Rabbi Eliezer of Megarish Ishtay, the Omar Lo, Haret Muteres L'Chalodam Chutz Mitlagi, the whole V'Nisis L'Echad V'Neshok. So she married any Moshe Pipik who she's allowed to marry. V'Nis Armalo and Niskarsha, and her Kmanal Atzlan, her second marriage fell apart as well. Once her second marriage is over, it completely discharges everything. She's even mutter to the first person that was originally nested to her through the first condition of the first get. And same condition is not accurate. It was only in the case of chutz. By Almanasta wouldn't have that. It would remain nuts with him. Teitzer Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Bar Elazar, Tshuva, Shimon ben Elazar had a kasha. The Devar Reb Elazar, Heichen Matinu, Shezeh Oiser, Mizeh Mati. So now we have a kasha of Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Where do you find that one person can answer and the other person can be matter? The first husband is answering this woman on the Chut Merubin. But the second husband, through his get, he's being matter this woman to marry Ruben. So how is it possible that the Isser was placed on her by A and the Isser should be able to be removed by B? You find that unusual? I'll show you it's a very common thing. Where a Yavama, the Baal Isser, by every Yavama, why is she Isser? She's also L'chul Alma. Why? The Isser stems from the fact that she was once married to her deceased husband, and that put an Isser on her for everybody else in the world. And who's being mad to her? The Yavim. Because if he makes evil and then he divorces her, she's not mutter to the rest of the world. So you see, the Yavim is being mad to an Isser that was actually put on her by her husband. Dr. Gemara, Hasam Yavim who ka'asal. The Isser for a Yavama L'shuk is actually not a residual Isser from the original husband. Actually, once he dies, she moved to everybody. And the Isser that she has now to everybody of Laitziah Shemet Zachuta, that's a brand new Isser created by the other. The Mibal, if you want to claim that it's a residual Isser remaining from her late husband, Hashari Vekaima. We know that she's mutter to everybody because he died. So these two lines is major Yistoidus in Yavamis. It's big shiurim, big lomdas that can go on forever on. Because this is a massive shaila. The zika that a Yavama has to her Yavim, which prevents her from marrying anybody else, is that a watered down remnant of the original marriage, which was once had in our Gemara? Or is it a brand new restriction and a brand new relationship of Zika? So that is exactly the Havamina and the Maskana of our Gemara. The Gemara first thought it was a remnant of the original marriage, and therefore how could the Yavim be matir something an issue that the original husband created. The Gemara said, no, it's an original. So we're going to have to find other examples where Zeh Oiser V'Zeh Matir. Now we're going to go through the Lomdus of Gans Mesechet Sedorim, which is also worthy of many, many Rosh Hashiva Shiur. Harini Dorim, the Noider Usher, the Chacham Matir. The Noider is making an Isser, and then when you go Shoyal by the Chacham is taking off the Isser. Once again, you see one could Asher, another could be Matir. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, ain't the Chacham Matir Klum, Ela B'Charata. A Chacham doesn't just make magic and take off a nether. The Chacham analyzes and shows that you yourself never meant to make that nether. And therefore, it's you yourself, really, who is being mocked in the nether. The Gemara, okay, that's Hafarish Nedarim. But what about Hafarish Nedarim, where we say the husband comes and make his guy? It's not Oiker, it's made Kari. It's not saying it was always a mistake. It was a good, valid nether until now. And from here and forward, it's no longer a nether. How we Hafarish Baal, the Isha Noideres, the Isha makes the nether, who Baal Maper, and the husband's Maper. The Gemara, husband could Penchas Mishmei. You know what the underlying reasoning is why a husband can be Maper, the nether of his wife? Really deep down inside, what gives him the power to be able to take away the nether is because deep down inside, when a woman makes a nether, she's looking for her husband's approval. And therefore, weiter, it's really the koyach comes from her herself to be involved with her nether. And then the Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah. So now we're going to come with the final kasha of Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah, which was the kasha that Rabbi said stands. The Omar, Krisos is a dover hakoyret beinai lebeino. Krisos means it's completely severing their relationship. And you, Rabbi Eliezer, are suggesting a new type of get that doesn't meet those standards because it's not completely severing the relationship. She's remaining alter to one person. This is not acceptable. The Rabbanon meaning the other people who didn't ask this kasha. Rabbi Yochanan didn't ask this kasha, and Rabbi Parvin didn't ask this kasha, and Rabbi Akiva didn't ask this kasha. This is such a simple kasha. It's not priesthood. Why didn't they ask this kasha? Because they hold that priesthood doesn't teach you that you can't have a carve out in the get. Priesthood teaches you something else. I priestess my of delay. You needed to tell you a different thing, that any Tanai has to be a Tanai that will eventually expire. Because then she's going to eventually be free of the Tanai. Or it has to at least be able to eventually expire. For instance, if he makes a get almanat that she should never, ever, ever able to drink wine. So for the rest of her life, she's tied to him because she's not allowed to drink wine. You're never, ever allowed to go to your father's house. Aims increasing. Because ultimately, she's forever connected to him. But if he said, Shloshim Yoim, you may not visit your father for 30 days, you may not drink wine for 30 days, that's her razor piece. That's creases. So that's what we learn from creases. Not that a carve out for one person wouldn't work. The idach, how is Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah, who does understand from creases that the get of Rebbe Eliezer should not be valid, how is he to know this rule that the Tanai has to expire before she dies? Mikari's creases not. It could have said Sefer Kari. Why did it say Sefer Creases? We learn both things. The Rabbanan Kari's creases for Darshi, so therefore they will only learn from Sefer Creases that the Tanai has to expire. So he didn't say you're not allowed to drink wine for the rest of your life. He said you're not allowed to drink wine for the rest of my life. But if I die, you're allowed to drink wine. So that's not unlimited. Nevertheless, Rava said Ainzer creases, which is puzzling. Because Lamaisa, after he dies, she will be able to drink wine. What about if he said, Kol you may you may not drink wine for the rest of Moshe Pipik's life? Hareza creases. What's the difference? Either way, one of these two people can die before she does. Maybe he'll die before she dies. And the T'nai will be completely fulfilled, and now she's completely a free woman, and she's even allowed to drink wine. Even if he says you're not allowed to drink wine as long as I'm alive, same thing. Maybe he will die before she will die, and therefore the T'nai is completely discharged. And why shouldn't it be a good get? Zakuma, you're right. In both cases, it is a good get. If you tell a woman this is your get, you never drink wine, that won't be a krisus because she's locked in for the rest of her life. But kol yemei chayai, oy chayei ploni, haray is a krisus. Boy minei Rava merabna. Rava had a kasha, a shaila of Rabbanan. Hayoim I at ishti, ulumachar at ishti. Another weird configuration. I'm giving you a get that today you're not my wife, but tomorrow you're back my wife again. Now, will that weird configuration of a get work? So instead of being the shire, saying my get doesn't apply to that person, I'm saying my get doesn't apply to a certain time. Whether or not you hold that you could create a get that limits itself, doesn't apply to one person or not, is irrelevant to this shaila. No matter what you held by that shaila, this shaila is still relevant. Even if you hold it, you could say this is a get plenty. I'm sorry, Shmuel.
That's okay.
Shmuel, are you talking to me?
No. Somebody's walking by. So have a good day.
Okay, no problem. Maybe Rabbi Eliezer only said that if you say chutz miploni, it works. Because for whoever the get does work, it works forever. Here, yes, the get might apply to everybody, but it doesn't apply all the time. That's not a good get. Maybe even Rabbi Eliezer would agree that's not a good get. Or maybe it doesn't make a difference. Any shear is acceptable. Or Tiboyle Rabbana, who say that it doesn't work by the case of excluding one person from the get. Acting like Amri Rabbanan Hassam, Elad like Paskamine Elagamri. At no time is this woman ever completely separated from him because she's always still offered to one person. Aval Haka, even the pasta. But here, at one point in her life, she's completely separated from her because he says, it's a good get. Now, very, very important, even the pasta. The shaila here is, will the get be a good get? But Lamaita, will a t'nai work? Will she become now married to him again tomorrow? So for that, Rashi says no. In fact, she's not. So what we're saying here is, if the get is a good get, when he says you're Meguresha today and married to me tomorrow, the get's a good get, but you're not married to me tomorrow. It doesn't work. Once the get is found, he has to. If he wants to marry her again, he'll have to make a kedushin. The t'nai will not. Dr. Gemara, Buster the boy, other pash. After this shaila was asked, the Gemara was pushed the shaila. Who was asked the shaila? Rava. Rava was pushed the shaila by himself. So let's see how he was pushed the shaila. We'll turn on to Pedalet Amar Aleph. I was hoping to finish this daf today, but it's not looking good because we only have 10 minutes left, but we'll see what we could do. Zok to Gemara, Mistabra, Bein Rabbi Eliezer, Bein Rabbanan, even the Pasuk. Once the marriage is over, the marriage is over. It doesn't create anything. How about a different time? This should be your get. You must marry Reuben. I'll give you a get, but you must marry Reuben. The Allah is, and we'll read it with Pashat. She may not marry Reuben. Well, if she's not going to marry Reuben, it won't be a good get. But that's what the Bracha says. She may not marry Reuben. But if she does marry Reuben, we won't force them to divorce. What in the world is going on? She should not marry him. You know why she shouldn't marry Reuben? Because if he's instructing her that she must marry Reuben, people are going to think that this is some type of wife swapping scheme, highly inappropriate. People are going to say, oh, they endorse, the best endorses here wife swapping. He's divorcing his wife to make her available to his friend. If she ended up marrying that Reuben, we will not make them divorce her. In fact, she was Makani. Frankly, that makes no sense. Because what you're saying is that since we're afraid of wife swapping, we're not going to let her trigger the t'nai. So in essence, she's not Megureshes. Frankly, are you going to tell me because of the Gzera, we're not going to let her marry that person, not trigger the get, and we're going to let her walk free? How could you do that? It's not a valid get because she didn't trigger the t'nai. This is what happened to Bryson. You know why she shouldn't marry that Reuben? for the same reason. She shouldn't marry him because what's going to happen is people are going to think that wife swapping is endorsed. But and this is after like this. But even if she married somebody else, and technically she wasn't legalistic, we let them stay married. Once again, you're allowing a woman who's not Miguresha because she didn't trigger the tonight, and now she's marrying up. This is Mamash and she's just Lama. This is shot. So we need to have a couple of takes till we finally get a good shot that will stick. I raise the loy enough the loy. Do not let marry Ruvain. Once again, people are going to say that the best endorses wife swapping. And if she does marry Ruvain, loy say we don't force her to divorce. Because of that zera, we're not going to force him to divorce his wife. Amalei Rava, we're still not out of the woods because it says loy tina say loy, the bride said, which is machma that she may marry somebody else. Loy who the loy tina say, say. Are you suggesting that she's allowed to marry another man? The same problem back again. She has to be mekayim t'nai, otherwise she's a native fish. There's not a problem. What was this tonight? His tonight was you have to marry Reuven. It doesn't mean you have to marry Reuven right away. Maybe you have to eventually marry Reuven. So let her marry whoever she wants, as long as eventually she makes sure to be Mekayim or Tnai, and she's able to marry Reuven, which will then retroactively validate her get. Mekayim or Tnai. Right tomorrow. Right to begin after the mitzvah yom umikra shalomachar Mekayim or Tnai. Right tomorrow. Ulaha the Pligas alei Rabbi Yehuda. We have to compare it to that we have to compare it to Rabbi Yehuda's case. Because what if she doesn't? She ends up marrying this other person, and what if she ends up not fulfilling the Tnai? That's a disaster. The Itmar we learned. What happens if someone says, it's okay for me to sleep today if I sleep tomorrow? So the nether is today, the trigger for the nether is tomorrow. Don't sleep today, because you don't know if you're going to end up triggering the nether tomorrow. And now it came out that your sleep today was in violation of a nether. Rav Nachman says, no problem. You could sleep today, and you just make sure not to sleep tomorrow. So the problem over here is, it seems that based on the way we understood its price, that we let her marry, and we're not concerned, as long as sometime in the future she'll marry the point, create the trigger, that'll be good enough. That sounds like Rav Nachman. It doesn't sound like it stems with Rabbi Yehuda, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, you can't take such a risk. First, make sure that you're not going to violate. So are you telling me that we're following the shita of Rav Nachman, not like Rabbi Yehuda? Dr. Gemara, no, it doesn't even work for that. In the case of the sleep, you have control if you're going to sleep, if you're not going to sleep. So yes, even according to Rav Nachman, you could sleep today. You know why? Because you'll make sure tomorrow not to fall asleep. You'll get yourself an alarm clock. You'll get yourself cold water. Whatever it is, you're in control. The boy Marvis Nafshe, the Stilu Asa. He can keep himself up using the method of Stilu Asa. I'm not sure what the art scroll says, but I think it means you could pinch yourself. You could stop yourself from falling asleep. I'm not sure if anybody has an art scroll over there.
He may prick himself all day long with the thorn and almost.
So he can keep himself awake. Well, we normally won't fall asleep. But if she marries a third party, she's no longer in control as to whether or not she'll be able to fulfill the Tnai by marrying Reuven. You know why? Because who said her husband will want to divorce her? So therefore, it won't be a good. We're back to the drawing board. What is shot in this price? So let's try one more time. If someone makes a Tnai that you're only allowed to marry Reuven, is only if you marry Reuven, then she's stuck. She's not allowed to marry Reuven, and she's not allowed to marry anybody else. She can't marry him. Once again, people are going to say that Rabbanan endorse wife swapping. She can't marry anybody else either. You know why? The body because she has to be Mekayim Tnai. Until she's Mekayim Tnai, she cannot marry anybody else. It's too dangerous. But if she married Reuben, then why say the mission because people might say that wife swapping is endorsed, that's why we won't let her marry him. Once she marries Reuben, we'll let her remain married to Reuben. But if she marries somebody else, then we force her to get divorced. The boy because it's too dangerous. She has to be Mekayim Tnai first by marrying Reuben before she could marry anybody else. We had a bride that supports Rabba. She may not marry anybody in such a case where you made a Tnai that you have to marry Twaini. And this is the law. They say, if she marries the person in Tnai, we allow it to remain her, but if she marries a third party, then they say she has to divorce. What if someone said, crazy Tnai, I'm giving you a get, Amanas, then you fly up to the sky. Amanas should tell you the time. You go down to the core of the earth. Amanas should typically you have to swallow a branch that's 4 amas long. Amanas should ben you have to bring me a branch that's 100 amas long. Crazy, impossible time. You have to walk on water. You have to walk across the ocean. All of these are not hidden because clearly you can't be Mekayim. It's not like that. It's a good get, but they get. You know why? Because he doesn't even mean what he's saying. He's not speaking shlusim. Any crazy tnai that there's not even a havam in it, that it can be fulfilled, the hisnal of mitchilasai, and he makes it a tnai, he doesn't really mean to place that condition on the get, rather, he's just trying to shoot from the mouth. The kosher, the get means kosher. Amr Nachman Amarav, halacha Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema. We pass like Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, then in fact this is a valid get. Amr Nachman Yitzchak, it's actually meduyak in our Mishnah, this halach. The Ketani we learned, any tanai that you could be mekayim at the end, it is not law but kilosai. He makes it at the beginning, tanai time. So you can make a dik that if it's efshir to be mekayim, tanai batal. The tanai is not a good tanai at all. Mamina. Dr. Gemara, the Gemara clears for a shayla. What if someone said, you need to do something that's impossible to do? But it's not impossible to do because physically it's impossible to do because the Torah doesn't allow us to do it. What if I say, this is your get, almanas, that you eat basar chazir? You have to violate and it's to the right, otherwise it's not a good get. Amar Abayi, it's the same thing. You can't do it. It's something that cannot be done. Therefore, it's a good get, and you don't have to do it tonight. Rav Amar, what do you mean? After the kachal, she can eat it. So in fact, it's not a good get unless she's the kind of night. Break the Gemara, Labaye, Halal, Lasuye, Bosachazir. According to Abaye, the klal is Lasuye, Bosachazir. The Rava, Pazeh, Lemute, Bosachazir. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema said the following words: Amr Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, whole Tanai, she'i avshela the time of b'shayva, yivitna l'b'kosay, ain't elak t'mafliga b'dvarim b'kosher. So that's a lotion of a klal, and that includes even a case of basar chazir. So let's have a look. Let's have a look over here. La'abaye klal la'suye basar chazir. According to Abaye, the klal includes basar chazir, meaning since it's something that you cannot do, therefore it won't be a good night. The Rava kazel l'mute basar chazir. According to Rava, because I believe Rava is the one who said after the achav. But the Rava saying no, this would not be a good get. What if someone says, "Harei gite almanash ketiba ali leplani"? What if someone says this is a get, but you have to be nivelas leplani? Allah is kind of not a get, but not being a get. What if he said almanash loy tivoyli la abu lavich? What if he said this is a get almanash that you don't have relations with your husband or with your father or with my father? So ain't choshin shem libela. There will be a good get, and we're not choshin that she'll be developed in it. So it will be a good get. However, what if he said the opposite? What if he made a tonight that she has to be novellas to her father or to her father-in-law? Like the Tani. It doesn't say that that would be a good get. Why doesn't it say? Why doesn't it say that that would be a good get? According to Abaye, it makes perfect sense. Why? Because according to Abaye, Rabbi Yehuda said, "Afidu lo yiskayim harei get." Rabbi Lezer says, even though you can't be Mekayim a crazy tonight, like it's still a get. So it makes perfect sense why it would be a good get. L'Rava kasha, but according to Rava said, let her be over the Israel if you want to get to work. It's not a kasha. By Bosat Nazir, yes, I'll say the condition is valid. And if she wants to get to Michal, she has to eat chazah. You know why? Because it's within her control to eat chazah. Bishop Bosat Nazir, after the Achlavalaki, Nami, after the Mishkate b'Mamada, or even if it's a case of Almanasa Tibayla the Pliny, she can pay him off to be with her. You think it's within her control to force her father or her father-in-law to live with her? Even if she would be willing to be over an Isser and get this get, so therefore, in such a case, even Rava would agree that the Tanai is not valid, and in fact, the get would be a good get. Zok Gemara, L'Rava, Plow, the plow that Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema said that it won't be a good get is Lasui Abba Vavicha. It will include, in the case of Abba Vavicha, that's an unreasonable Tanai, and he's just being mafud with Dvarim, therefore the get is a good get. And Kazeh is Lamute Basar Kazir. The Kazeh that the truth says, Kazeh get, that's Lamute Basar Kazir, because in fact, by the case of Basar Kazir, the Tanai would stand because it's within her power to be able to eat the Dover Alter if she wants to get to the Chal. But we have to stop here, unfortunately. I cannot finish Pei Daled. So B'ez Hashem, tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, we will learn. We'll have a little bit of a shorter session because we only have a half Alma to do, and we only have an Alma to do. But B'ez Hashem, I'll make sure to be available tomorrow at 6 to be able to learn. Neil, thank you so much. Are you going to be able to turn on the TV tomorrow?
Yeah. Your Shuli was here this morning. Your Shuli.
Yeah.